beautifuls. You're listening to Bliss Grit. I'm Vanessa Scotto, and I will be joined shortly by my dear friend and co-host, Brooke Thomas. On the show, we're talking about being on the embodied spiritual path, and what does that actually mean? What is a real evolution of our lives? How do we ultimately embrace everything, all the beauty and the crazy, the joys and the messes, the bliss and the grit that is a human life? In today's episode, we're responding to a Dear Bliss and Grit inquiry on one of our favorite topics, boundaries. Talking about boundaries. How do you know what's truly right for you? What happens when you say yes and you mean it, only to later feel tired and grumpy? Your ability to stay true to your inner yes and no is a most basic affirmation of your right to exist as you are. Yet, so many of us are challenged in this arena. With all our cultural and familial conditioning around earning love and being of service, you can imagine this conversation is full of our own personal stories and also tools we've collected to share with you along the way. If you're enjoying the show, we would be delighted if you left a review on iTunes or on our Facebook page, which is Bliss and Grit. You can also head over to blissandgrit.com to subscribe to hear any updates on upcoming events we might have in the near future. One last note, just in case you're new to the show, Brooke and I sometimes have potty mouths. So if there are kids around, you may want to pop in some headphones. Okay, everyone. Here we go. Hello, dear Brooke.
Hello, dear Vanessa.
And hello to all of you. We thought that today we would do a Dear Bliss and Grit episode. I guess it's been on our mind because, some of these topics, which you all are grasping so well and engaging on in such a beautiful and kind of high-level way, but they're big. And a lot of times we all might feel the need to kind of bite-size them into, okay, these are great ideas, but now how do I take it into my life, right? How do I take it off the cushion and into the world? So a few weeks back, we posted a little social media image, and the quote on the social media image was this: "No might make them angry, but it will make you free. If no one has ever told you, your freedom is more important than their anger. No might make them angry, but it will make you free." And one of our listeners had responded asking the following question: any advice for someone who says yes and that really does feel okay at the time, and it's only later when I'm exhausted and grumpy that I regret it? I genuinely would like to be able to do it all, but don't have the energy. So we thought we would start to just discuss this a little bit from our lens of experience. So Brooke, you want to kick in your 2 cents?
Sure. I was going to say solve this whole situation. I'm just kidding.
We love solving problems. It's our favorite.
So yeah, this is not an unfamiliar situation for me, what the listener describes. Like, I said yes, I meant yes. In that moment, I really wanted to help. And then I wound up, I can't remember exactly what word she said, but like in my case, I would say tired, resentful, burned out.
I think she said something like tired and grumpy.
Yeah. So that is not unfamiliar for me. And it's pretty unfamiliar these days, which makes I'm an alien from another planet feeling quite large when I don't find myself moving to do what would have been my normal pattern. So I guess what I'm getting at is conditioning. We all have these layers of conditioning, many, many, many layers. And so it's almost like I'm not the first one to use this analogy, but like a program or software that you're running in a computer system, right? And if that's the software that you have installed, it's going to automatically go along that route, that program route. And so if you're somebody whose operating system is coded this way, if somebody says to you, "Hey, you have a truck, do you mind helping me move my couch this weekend?" And your operating system is automatically going to go like, "Yes, Sure, it's the weekend. But usually there's a lot more to that story if we can slow it down. So there's usually a bunch of thoughts that happen all at once. And some of them are yes, or the word that pops out of your mouth is yes. And then some of the conditioning might be, and I'm just giving some examples. I certainly am not trying to speak for the person who wrote the question, but in this case, broad brush, some of the things might be, it wouldn't be articulated this way, but the conditioning would be, I want to be liked. Helpful people are likable people. I learned that you always say yes, because that's what good people do. I'm a helper. Like there's an identity of the helper, the one who's always willing to put other people first, that's virtuous and that's valued. And then in that same microsecond, whatever other thoughts might have arisen, like let's say there was some genuine no in there, which is like, oh my God, this week has been so exhausting. And I really was hoping to just spend my Saturday staring at a wall drinking tea, or all those things get suppressed. So I think that when we notice this as a pattern, right, that it's frequent. When I said yes, I really felt like, yes, I wanted to help. And then I realized I felt exhausted, cranky, burnt out, whatever. If we notice that that's a repeating pattern, that gets interesting. Then it's like, okay, so how can we slow it down so that we can see those bursts of conditioning thoughts that happen and just fly under the radar? I think about, probably because I'm wearing them right now, but like noise canceling headphones, you can't hear things when you're wearing noise canceling headphones because they're designed to cancel noise. Like conditioning is like wearing those headphones. It's designed to shut up the things that don't fit with what you were told is right. So if you were told nice people help, always say yes, the noise canceling headphones are going to cancel out the sound of your inner self saying anything that doesn't match that. Anything that says, oh my God, I just want my Saturday to be about laying on the floor, just gets suppressed. So the question is, isn't it always? How do we take the headphones off? And how do we hear all those things that we are suppressing and missing?
Yeah, it well said. And maybe there's even more we can add to this, because she did go on to say, after we had responded, something to the effect of like, I really want to help my community. Like I find that to be a valuable thing. And so one aspect of this is that life is complicated and sometimes we are complex and we do have two dueling needs. So you might have, an awareness that you have a wish to help someone, and that's a beautiful thing. And you love that about life. And that even sometimes when you do it, you feel really great and they feel great. And that whole movement is so cherished. And then you have a wish for more rest and relaxation because maybe you've been working really hard all week. Maybe you have other demands on you, and that both of these seem like they co-arise. They don't. There is an answer as to what's best for you. But both wishes may be true, right? I mean, gosh, I never wish I couldn't talk to a friend in need, right? It's like,
right.
I always wish that was the case. And sometimes it's not the case that I'm available. And there's like a little grief bubble that pops up around it. So, maybe one thing to recognize about ourselves is like, we get to be complex. Like that's okay to have multiple wishes. But when we do have multiple wishes, what is it that we're going to do about it? Which way are we going to choose? And what aspect is really driving the bus, right? So is it the aspect of ourselves? Like I always felt that I had to earn the right to breathe by helping people. I mean, it felt quite like I don't get to exist unless I'm in service. That's all that this world could possibly be about. So when that kind of energy would grab hold of the wheel and drive the bus, it's taken me all over the place. And then I'm giving and I'm overextending and I'm not aware of myself. And, that's a very different experience than when mindful Vanessa feels into her body, feels what's in alignment, and is like, yes, I have this to give right now. I would be so glad to offer this, right? The movements of the intention are going to look different, and it's going to plant a seed that will lead somewhere different, right? So it's like, when they talk about karma and they talk about planting seeds, I think about karma with this talk. I think about boundaries with this talk. There's like so much to discuss. Conditioning, as you said. But, from karma, they said, if you want to change your karma, you can do these beautifully good actions. But we talked about this in the episode on karma. There was like 4 steps to it. So before the action comes the intention. And that is the biggest aspect that plants a seed. That's the energy that gets repeated. So if my intention going into this community act of kindness is, well, that's what good community people do. And Vanessa wants to be a good community person. It's like mom always said, and like all of my conditioning is kind of grabbing hold of that steering wheel. I'm planting seeds of I have to. I'm planting seeds of there is a good and a bad way to move. I'm planting seeds of judgment if I was to actually rest, right? And then I do my action, and then those seeds start to grow. And that's how they become resentment fruit, and they become exhaustion fruit, and they become why don't I ever get my needs met fruit, right? So I think one thing that occurs to me is we have to slow it down, as you said, to start to understand the intention of the movement and decide, like, if there's not a perfect world where every single wish I ever have gets met at the same time, which way am I going to move? For you and I, we go, well, I guess I'll try to go back to truth. That seems like a right thing to do. And there was something else I was going to say that I have a feeling is going to come back to me really strongly, but just left. So let's start there. Yeah. Is that right? How are you going to move?
Yeah. And I think that feeling into truth, because you have to swim under the layers of conditioning, and you have to, in order to do that, you have to have a certain kind of realization about, oh, I have that layer of conditioning. Oh, that's a story I've been telling myself about how the world works forever. And those are, things that happen to all of us, but they certainly require a certain amount of leaning in and a certain amount of dedication, devotion. So to be able to swim under the layers of conditioning and to be able to connect with truth, first of all, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's going to be challenging. That's okay. It's okay. And so it's all right if you say yes and you meant no. And one of the ways I'm really into time lately, I'm having a lot of insight into the fact that there isn't any, it pops in and out. But we do things in these big chunks of time. Like I said yes. And so that means yes. That means I have to complete this project. That means that even the whole time I'm doing the project, so whatever my example was, using your truck to help someone move their couch on the weekend, I have to ignore myself the whole time until I get to the end when I have placed the couch in their new living room. And then I get to feel all the feelings I have, because I made this time chunk arbitrarily in my head, which is the project of getting their couch in my truck to their new place. But that's just totally arbitrary, So what we want is an opportunity or an ability to connect with ourselves in the moments as each moment goes, all this beat, 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 beat. Every second, every microsecond is a different little moment, has this kind of granular grains of sand quality, really. And so if you can keep checking in with yourself, then you notice the resentment, the frustration, the irritation, the exhaustion much more quickly. And then you have the opportunity to give yourself permission, because there's always permission to change your mind. It's totally human to say yes when you mean no, and to not realize that you meant no, or to not realize how much this project you said yes to would take out of you, how much demand it would be, what it would actually be like. You didn't know until you were in it. you're allowed to go, oh, actually, I'm exhausted. I didn't realize I was going to wake up on Saturday morning and feel exhausted. I didn't anticipate 2 weeks ago when I said yes that I was going to have such a demanding work week this week. I didn't anticipate that I was going to be fighting off the cold that my son caught at school this Saturday. But I said yes to this giant arbitrary time bubble I sealed around the truck couch project. It's like, no, those are moments to hear yourself saying, no, I know you said yes, but it's no this Saturday. And then we get to always, it's okay,
I just cringe even listening to this because that's how bad I am with boundaries still. It's like, I think that boundaries are one of my larger core karmic issues that I have in my life. And I can see like the earlier progression of it, like early in my career when I felt like I had to help people because that is the thing to do in this world or else life is meaningless. And then I am not that good a person and I am selfish and like that whole cascading pain body. So earlier when I had that, it really wasn't different in terms of what my day-to-day looked like. Like I still worked with people, but the difference was I felt obligated. And so I brought that energy in. I made deals financially that may not have felt comfortable, like bartering things, or I spent extra time even if I didn't feel I had that energy reserve available or that time reserve available. And then what I noticed in those early phases was I was completely drained by my practice. I was definitely resentful. The funny thing is like, you would say resentful of the people who I was doing too much for, but like always what I realized was resentful of myself. I mean, it's us, right? It's like, it wasn't them. It was that I felt this kind of like umbilical cord between me and them, and their needed to be met by me. As if they pulled to the left, I was pulling to the left. So of course the resentment seems exterior, but it's really not at them because all along that was an illusion that they moved to the left and I have to move to the left. The truth was I have a no and no exists. Now in my life today, it's so much more subtle and it's really refined and it's almost exclusively reserved for my parents and my husband and, family members. But nevertheless, I remember reading Kieran's book. Forgot the title of it. Do you remember the name of her book?
Tools for Sanity?
Yeah, Tools for Sanity. Great. And she was telling this story about like, what if you were bike riding and you're bike riding with your friend and like, it's this beautiful day you agreed to, just like you just said, Brooke, like I agreed to it. I'm now bike riding. And for some reason, I always picture the Bay Area, like I'm bike riding and I'm looking at the Golden Gate and I'm along that. And then all of a sudden I'm like, no, this doesn't feel right anymore. I'm going to go home. And I don't even need to explain myself, and Kieran's, it's not right anymore. I'm going to go home. And I'm like, what?
Right.
Like just thinking about it is giving me a rash, and that's because there's something really juicy for me here. There's something really core. So I think for many of us, the conditioning around these umbilical cords to people, the conditioning around taking responsibility for others' feelings, the conditioning around not wanting to be a selfish, thoughtless dick, like maybe our parents were or someone else we knew was, and like I do not want to be that person. Like for me, I get afraid, like I don't want to be a disappointment to anyone, so like what if I say, no, I'm done with this movement. I said I'd help you move, but don't feel like it anymore. Like, whoa, what if they're really disappointed or their feelings are hurt? The conditioning to not create that experience was so large. So I've had to work with it really in micro movements. And there's two things that I sort of look at. One is, well, what Kieran, let's say from the spiritual side, what Kieran presents, which I think this is what I meant to say before and I had forgotten. It's kind of this like large overarching ideology that when you don't have can make this a little harder, which is what's good for one is good for all.
Yeah.
We are all interconnected. That's a very helpful place to begin because when your wiring around not harming people is so strong and so dense and so deep, that's a very soft way to hold it. And of course, a very true way. So I think we can look a little more at that. And then the second thing that I do is I learn where my boundaries are because I'm exhausted and resentful. So, I mean, this is a very typical thing in psychology. It's like you don't always know where your boundaries are until someone's crossed them or until you've crossed them or betrayed them or let go of them. So, what's that poem? I think we've read it in episodes before, but the one where like she's, a person's walking down the street and they fall in the hole. And, they get up and then they're walking down the street and like they see the hole, but they still fall in again. And then they get up and then they're walking down the street. And finally, the end of it is they choose another street. But in the beginning, the best thing we can do is like we're seeing the holes. So one bit of advice that I would give that I've given to myself, I've given to clients, it's like slow down. Recognize when you're feeling exhausted. Recognize when you're feeling resentful. Recognize that means there was a boundary betrayed. And then get real close to it. Like, where was the beginning of that movement? What happened in that dynamic? Did a belief system, like some of the examples you were giving us, Brooke, did that get triggered? Was it pain body triggered? At what point did the pressure feel so intense that you had to cave on what felt more true for you? And as you get real micro about it, these moments are genius and they're beautiful because they give you all of the information you need to see where you're hooked.
Yeah.
And where you're hooked just points to where you're liberated, right? Where you can liberate is what I mean, right?
I have like 60 things I want to say.
I know,
and they're all jammed in the door trying to get out.
I know. And they're like, me, I want to drive the bus.
This is the important concept to get across. Okay. I'm going to start with slowing down because we've said that several times. And I would imagine that for some people hearing that, it's like, what do you mean slow down? Do you mean literally when someone asks you for a favor, don't say it, can I get back to you tomorrow? Like that can be helpful.
Yeah, sometimes that is helpful.
Yeah, in like a super tangible tip and trick kind of way.
Yeah.
Just if it's helpful in the beginning to just give yourself a rule, like we've said before, we're not fans of rules, but if it's a rule that just gives you spaciousness so that you can actually feel what's true for you, that rule might be something like, if this is really a problem for you, right? If you've seen this pattern repeating and it's really causing you quite a lot of fatigue and what I would say is harm, to say, I don't say yes to favors unless I've had, 2 hours or 24 hours to decide, can I get back to you tomorrow? That's a really reasonable thing to ask. And that's a very physical, tangible world. Slow down.
And I used to do that without saying that. So just, can I get right back to you?
Yep.
Like, let me look at my calendar. Let me, think about it because the whole thing was such a vulnerable exploration. I couldn't even get those articulated, truth-oriented words out. Like, this is my policy. But nevertheless, so I did have to use that actual physical slowdown so I could get clear because like you were illuminating, that conditioning is so rapidy.
Oh, it just zings right through the programming.
And it's like those canceling headphones. So I couldn't even feel what my yes was. So I had to do that kind of artificial pause. I just couldn't even have articulated it so clearly.
Yeah. And we're allowed to ask for that. If someone's asking us a favor and asking us if we can help them or asking us anything, how we feel about them or what we think we want to do next year for school or I don't know, we get to take the space we need. We really do.
Yes, we do.
And then the other slow down, because because our orientation is thinking in our culture, we can always overthink in a way that's not helpful. And I find that with conditioning, doing that with a therapist or, a spiritual mentor or coach can be tremendously helpful because they can see things, they can see patterns that you can't see. But thinking to yourself about yourself very quickly gets Cirque du Soleil level of acrobatics. So what I prefer for slowing down, two things. One, go to the body. And this is not just when someone asks you a favor, this is cultivate a relationship with your body in a way where you just feel it on the inside. So for you and I, that's somatic meditation. For other people, maybe the word meditation gives them hives at this point. Go to a delicious restorative yoga class. I don't know what it's going to be, but like something that gives you, and I know a lot of people who have a very deep felt experience of their body with sports that they do, swimming or running or going to yoga. But something that cultivates where you're listening, where you're not just feeding input into your body, like you would say in a demanding fitness kind of way. Do this, do that. Now it's time for, lat pull downs or whatever, I mean, more of a receptive listening kind of relationship, and feeling. And that way, that gets stronger and stronger over time. And that way I can feel when something's off, because that also happens lightning fast. It's just the noise canceling headphones didn't let me feel it before. And so if someone asks me for a favor and I suddenly feel the squirmy wormies in my solar plexus, that doesn't necessarily mean yes or no. It just means something. My body, my gut self has some opinion about this, and I need a little time and space to sink down into that feeling and see, is it because as when they asked me, there was this clash that came together, which was, you should say yes. Nice people always say yes. Clashed with, oh my God, I cannot do another errand this weekend. And so your solar plexus went ding, 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 ding. I don't like this clashing. I feel something about this. So that's another important slowdown. And then, for some people, different inquiry tools can work well too. And you and I have talked a good bit about Byron Katie's work on the show, because that puts you in a position where you have to get better at pulling out the thought. Like, what was the thought that I had right before I started to feel the upset emotions? Oh, the thought was, I can't say no, or maybe it was something at them like, oh my God, they're always fucking asking me for something. You get to pull out the thought and then, go through a process of inquiring about, is that true? And just getting closer and closer to what's actually true for you. So I just want to say that so that people feel like they have tools, because these things are certainly slippery. Conditioning is slippery.
It's everything.
It's everything
besides the truth.
It's everything besides the truth. Exactly. That is exactly
Boom.
Right.
That just happened.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, one of the tools I use actually works with the imaginal realm, where I've always been prone to picturing things, like getting an image of things and then feeling into my body.
Yes.
And then this was further reinforced. It's one way that Kieran will work with Delicious Yes with people. So image works really, really well for some people. It's almost like what Brooke just described. If you're listening well, you'll notice there's these different gateways. It's like purely kinesthetic, like come in through mindfulness of the body. There's like this other way that you're coming in through mindfulness of the mind, right? Like I'm doing inquiry and I'm going to ask questions and prompts. And then there's this other way where you can come in with vision or imagination. And all of these will be different gateways. And depending on what you're, most able to do, one will be a better gateway for you than others, or you may use them all, right? So that's up to you. But what I would do is, and I tell this to clients sometimes, is let's say you're at a crossroads. Let's say there's any question in your life, like, do I say yes or no to this job? Is this person good for me in my life? Is this a healthy person to be around? Do I want to help my neighbor, move? Like Brooke was using that example. In any of those cases, you can close your eyes, ground your body. I always start with grounding your body, taking a few breaths, kind of turning on your third eye with a gentle warmth of attention. And then I picture them. So I picture saying yes to this job and to this opportunity. And I picture what that'll be like on a day-to-day level. And then I picture saying no. Oh, I'm sorry. And then I feel into my body. What does it feel like? And what does it feel like as I imagine saying yes? And then I picture saying no. And I go through that and I feel into my body. And sometimes you'll get a really, really clear difference. It's just like, oh, yeah, I do not want to do this, or I for sure as shit want to do this. I'm just scared, or you'll get like a really clear answer. And sometimes you'll just get information that'll lead you to the inquiry phase. But regardless, this is a way to start to learn how to reconnect to your gut instincts. Because I think, of course, we must have mentioned this before, but conditioning, did you ever read the 4 Agreements, Brooke?
It's been a long time, but I've had people keep breaking it up with me lately, actually. So I think
Really?
It's time to revisit. Yeah.
Oh, God, listen to the audio.
Okay.
He reads it, and it is delicious. His voice carries the energy. So it's a great book for those of you who may not have read it. But he uses a word that's like, ooh, even more intense than conditioning. He uses the word domestication.
It's like sucker punch a bullseye. Yes.
Booyah, boom, crash, all of it, everything but truth there. Like what? And it's so true. And it's like, your family domesticates you, civilization domesticates you, our society domesticates you. It breaks you in, it trains you in how to be. So the pull to move away from your primal instincts via domestication is so strong. I mean, it is the human journey. It's the thing. It's the number one thing we deal with as humans. It's so strong that we can lose touch with what feels right. I mean, oh, Lord, I'd like to think I'm advanced on this topic. And I don't mean advanced past people. I mean for myself. And I'm sure, I know I am. But like every time I think I get like farther, like the new level presents to show me, where I'm still stuck. Like when I moved out of Florida, all of you listening were kind of with us on this journey. But it was a very hard movement for me because I had to disappoint my parents. I had to move into an action that they would formerly have claimed as selfish. And I had to bring up all of these levels of like saying no and cutting an umbilical cord that intellectually, of course, I'd already gotten over, but literally and physically and energetically, I was still working with. And I accomplish it. And it's great. And it's like, oh my God. And actually things turned out wonderful. And my parents have been wonderful. And I've been wonderful. And then my dad gets sick. And I'm like, can I really stay in Austin when my dad's sick? Like, but they're going to need me. And it's like, I was just saying to Kieran the other day, it's like as if I graduated college and now I'm on master's level with this issue,
Yeah.
It's ever unfolding. And it's not kind to think that this is something you can do overnight, because for many people, they've dulled their connection to the answer of what's their yes. That's why it's like quite masterful work, like we've said all the time. You have a saying about this, something about a ninja level shit.
It's extreme ninja warrior level. Yes.
Yeah, that thing. So I think, as you're beginning to work with this, recognize that it's going to be a process, that sometimes you don't know until your boundaries have collapsed and you're upset. And that's pretty par for the course.
Totally.
And that may happen 100 times before something changes, or maybe just once. That's just dependent. But recognize that that's going to happen. And then all of these different tools Brooke and I are talking about are the different ways you'll get into understanding this, like the architecture of this movement of collapse of your boundary for the sake of. You'll get to know it in much, much, much closer detail. And awareness always does what awareness does. It will soften it. And it will unravel it. Because you know how awareness is, right? Then you can't take your eye off it anymore.
Yeah.
Then you're like, I did it again.
Yeah, I know. And you're like, where was the place? Where was the place I got hooked? Like, what was the slightly different thought that I tripped over this time, which was different from last time? And and it just keeps coming.
It keeps
So I want to get into one other, you brought up kind of a big concept, which is an episode in and of itself, but I want to just underline it a little bit because it's at least helpful as just a seed that gets planted. And it's, it's like a little tiny sapling over in my soil, so this is something that's really growing in me as well. Which is that when you do what's true for you, it's what's best for everybody.
Y'all just are going to have to work with us on this one because it's a sapling in my soil too. I see it.
Yeah, I see it now. Before I was like, that's a bunch of bullshit. Like that's just so that I don't feel bad when I disappoint people.
Yeah,
You're just telling me that. And it's like
entitled crap.
No, it's true. It's really interesting. So I had somebody ask me the other day for advice. It's a word that I'm always like, my office mate Ellen says, never give someone advice unless they ask for it 4 times. So I told this person that, and then I did wind up giving them advice. But the advice more or less, they were asking how they could affect the outcome of someone's life that was not their own, and somebody's life who had not asked them at all for help. And they were not suffering with what was going on with them. This person was suffering with what they observed in that person.
Yeah.
And so it's like the only advice I could give, and I give this all the time, is like the helper types. And I put myself in that basket. I'm somebody who's been heavily conditioned to be a helper. We do so much more good when we stay in our own lane, and when we have faith in the people around us, that they are God too, that life is moving through them too, just as much as it is through us, and that it's not up to us to control or fix or catch or, and really we disable so much of what can be like a beautiful opportunity for people when we pretend that we're able to like affect other people's lives. So just, you don't have to necessarily believe that whenever you do what's true for you, it's going to be all, and I'm certainly not saying like in the errand truck couch example that if you said no, that person would be like, you know what? I actually did. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't want that. And I didn't realize it until you said it. No, like people will be pissy. People get hurt feelings. People get broken hearts. All those things will happen. But it is what is in everyone's best interest for all of us to operate a lot more from really genuine truth. So just
here's like
tinker.
Simple. There is a real simple way that I came to understand this. And it is client work was always just an easy way to see it because it's not loaded the way family work would be. But it happens with family stuff too. And I've addressed this before. So as long as I think I'm obligated to, because of some pain body movement within my system, then when someone just asks for what they need or want or would like, they've already been a hassle. Like, oh, you just asking me this means I have to go through this whole process. And I'm probably going to have to say yes, because that's what I have to do. And now I'm like kind of pissed because you put me in a position and I got to think about it. And then I'm going to have to say yes. And now I have to do this thing and I didn't even want to do this thing. Right. That's what like everyone likes to think they're not a victim. But on some level, that is a victim stance because it's a victim to our own belief system, right? So here I am, and I'm a victim to my own belief system. When someone asks me, it's like, now I got to say yes. Well, okay. I think it's very obvious the levels of suffering that would create within me, right? I mean, Sabamfu Some used to say, if you give away your power, someone else will take it and they will use it poorly.
God, what a great
And then you will
quote.
be upset.
Yeah.
Yes. And it happens all the time. And she said, because they don't know how to use your power. They don't know what's best for you. Right. And so in that case, it's like, okay, so I now feel obligated. I now feel stuck. And now I'm pissy or I'm tired. Well, is that what that person wanted for me?
Right, exactly. Like in a very straightforward way. Now they're spending their Saturday moving their couch with some pissy, exhausted, resentful person.
Yeah. Or they find out later I did a great job of covering it up while they were there. But afterwards I went home and like threw my arm over my head and was like, oh God, life is so hard. And like, I'm always alone. Or maybe I got like resentful. So the next time that client came in, I might like bristle, like, ugh. And maybe I don't touch them the same way. This is so long ago. I'm really talking about my acupuncture practice more than anything. So it's like, then maybe I don't touch them. Maybe I touch them with resentment in my hands, as hard as I try not to.
Yeah.
So all of these different ways, because we're connected, because of our mirror neurons, because of our empathic wiring, where we are one. We are genuinely one. People feel these movements. I mean, my mom could feel when I was so upset with her for like having a need of me, which was the most natural need she had because she's a mom and it was really for love and connection. But it was like I always took it to me and I had to be near her or I had to do what she wanted. And so then I would feel angry and then I'd be like, how could she put that on me? And all of these like distortions in the field, right? And then I would be defended against her. And then she would feel that.
Yeah.
And that was shitty. Now, she doesn't understand exactly why she's feeling that. So guess what she did? She'd come in closer. Oh, for fuck's sake. Now she wants more. Right? And then the distortion in the field. And like it goes on. And it turns out that when I started moving from truth, not from anything else, now we have connection. Yeah. And now we're closer. So now there's not that same level of clinginess because I'm there. I'm actually present because I get to exist, right? Yeah. To say yes and no, it's our most basic affirmation of our existence, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I have the right to move in a way that feels really true and nourishing. I get to take care of my body. I get to take care of my mind. I get to give from real generosity of spirit, not from obligation. I get to do all of it. My yes and no is my right to exist just as I am. And when we believed somewhere along the way that we had to abdicate it, I think it just winds up creating these ripples into our relationships.
Yeah.
Where friends feel like pains in the asses just for having asked you.
Right.
Or like
you're not minding your own boundaries and they're supposed to do it for you. What? Like all they did was ask, can you help me move my couch,
Right. And now you're like, that's so annoying in your body. And they feel it if they're a little sensitive. And if they're not a little sensitive, they feel it and they just don't understand what's happening. And all of these levels at which the distortions can occur. And I think compassion is the secret sauce for all of this. Recognizing that we've all been domesticated. We all have this kind of conditioning. We all are living in the illusion that we're not connected. We're living in the illusion that if I keep moving in a contorted rhythm that's not for my highest, that's not aligned with my natural gait, that won't affect everybody around me. That's what people want from me even, right? Like that's the imagining. Like, ooh, isn't Brooke going to like it if I keep jerking to the left and like twisting and turning my head? And it's like, no, it feels really shitty to be Brooke on the other side of that movement. Just move and flow and walk and it will feel really nice to be Brooke. And maybe she won't like my no, but maybe if I give her that no, it'll give her permission to give someone else a no. I don't really know what it'll invite for her. That part's not my business, but I can trust, like we've said, truth heals. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. The show notes, including any resources we mentioned, live at blissandgrit.com. You could just go over to the website and scroll down and you'll see each episode's separate post and the resources we put right in there. Also, please come play with us on social media. Instagram and Facebook are where we're available. And we have some good conversations going on over there. We're Bliss and Grit at both of those spots. If you are feeling like you want to support us, well, one way to do it is to write a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our Facebook page, which is Bliss and Grit. We so love hearing from all of you, and it also helps other people to find the show. If technology isn't your thing, but you are enjoying the show, well, please just go ahead and tell your friends who you think it might resonate with. It's so appreciated. And huge gratitude to all of those who have already written reviews There's quite a number of you now, like Kelly Bryant Yoga and Kaylee Miller and Elise Gibb and Nadia Morrow. And I just want to read one that actually just got posted yesterday. Short, but oh so sweet. This one is from Kay Wizgerda. And they say, "A knot in my belly just unkinked while listening to the latest episode on ease." Thanks, Vanessa and Brooke. Well, thank you for sharing that. It is actually a pretty big deal and a super wonderful thing to hear. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.